All right, we are live, and today we get the honor to hear the origin story of a man who honestly needs no introduction to our audience. He has crowned more kings in the game of real estate than the freaking royal family. He's the most prolific sales trainer in the real estate industry, hands down. Mints more millionaires on a daily basis than Kodiak. His Real Estate Disruptors podcast is the most respected and sought after shows in the industry. And this guy can hoop, right? Kobe. And today
I
I
can
have
attempt
the
to hoop.
pleasure to introduce you guys to the man, the myth, the legend, our friend Steve Trang. Steve, thank you so much for being on here today, my friend. Thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me on. I'm honored. I always appreciate it, the opportunity to share and hopefully inspire some people that are in earlier parts of their career and kind of help them get past that hurdle, because that first hurdle is usually the hardest.
100%. 100%. The comments are already blowing up, already rock and roll. And I see that it's going to be a great episode. Sam, lead us in, my friend.
Absolutely. So, Logan, first and foremost, thank you for getting this set up. I don't know how you do what you do, but you had a connection with Steve, and then the fact that I get to be here, share some space and some time with you right now, Steve, it's a little bit surreal, and it's a blessing to me. So again, thank you so much for being here. The whole purpose of the origin story is a lesson that Pace Morby, my mentor, taught me. And that's that it is very difficult for someone who is new to the game and they're starting the scary entrepreneurial journey to relate to Lambos and Ferraris and mansions and private jets and things like that. And those things motivate them. They do a great job of motivating them, and it gets them to maybe perform some action for about a day, 2 days. But by the 13th cold call, they're done. They're burned out, right?
Yep.
So Pace taught me instead what inspires people to action is relating to an origin story. And right now, you are one of the biggest leaders in our industry, and it's a very massive thing for me. It's so important. It's not just that you're a leader; you're known for creating more leaders. You pluck people out of obscurity, you give them a platform, and then they go on to do such great, great things. One of those people being my mentor, Pace, and that man went on to change my life. So again, I want to thank you for that. But we want to highlight your journey, how you got to where you're at, some of the things that people may not have heard, some of the things that people may not know yet. And I can almost guarantee that people will relate to that more than maybe all of the massive amounts of success you have. And hopefully that gets them to life-changing action. So again, brother, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you. I'm honored. Thank you for the kind words. And really, I know, like they say, like I help them, on their way. I'm just a step, right? Like they already have it within them. We're just helping them get there a little bit faster. Like I don't necessarily create millionaires because these people, I knighted them, right? Like they had it. I just might have maybe helped them polish it a little sooner. That's really it.
It's amazing. So Steve, if you don't mind, again, whether you want to take credit for it or not, you definitely mint millionaires, and you have amazing sales training. People like you. Whether that step is a small step or a big step, that step is so vital and so important for people to get to that level and having the freedom in their life. But tell us a little bit about your journey and where it started for you, and how you became the person you are today.
Sure. So I think, in order to do it justice, we have to go back quite a ways, and I don't know how much time you guys have.
Let's do it. I
mean, if you go back,
every appointment is canceled for every appointment is canceled for today, Steve. We're good.
So if you look at it historically, my grandparents on both sides were from China. And so they were merchants in China, right? They were entrepreneurs, and they had it. And then this whole war, right, between communists and capitalists occurred. They fled China, right? They went down to Vietnam. Everything was normal down there. And then, as you guys know, communism started to take hold over there. And so again, communists versus capitalists, and my family were a bunch of capitalists who actually had everything taken away by the communists, and they fled Vietnam to come to the U.S. So I think part of it is we actually come from a lineage of entrepreneurs, merchants, and I didn't know that until much, much later. But we're entrepreneurs. So we're actually an entrepreneurial family. It runs in our family. And growing up Asian, Sam may appreciate this, right? You can be anything you want as long as it's doctor, lawyer, or dentist, right? And that was the
story of my life, man. Story of my life. Yeah.
That's the burden we're given growing up Asian. But there's a few other things too, is that, you had to get straight A's, right? Like if you got 100, if you got 99 at a test, it wasn't good job. It was like, what happened? right? And you had these super high expectations. And I think that, growing up with that kind of mindset, with our culture where education is so paramount to becoming one of those three things, you kind of get some issues built into you. I don't complain about it, but this is the reality. They call it, there was a whole book about it, the Tiger Mom, which is basically every kid that grows up with that environment is going to be an achiever. Like, they're built in to achieve because that's what mom and dad wants. They're going to be super competitive because you have to be super competitive if you want to be an achiever. And you have low self-esteem. Now, fortunately, I didn't get that part instilled into me, but like, those are the things that are programmed into you with that childhood, right? Like, every family occasion is like, hey, my son's doing this. Hey, my daughter's doing that. And it's always like this comparison game. So that's the environment I grew up with. So like I said, I bring that back because I went to engineering, right? I got a full ride to ASU. I graduated with a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering, 4-year degree. I went to become a PhD student at UC San Diego, got a full ride to UC San Diego. Like, they don't talk about this a lot, but there's also recruiting programs for engineers. So I was recruited to go to UC San Diego. They gave me a full ride. And I did that a little bit for a year and a half until I realized that I had no desire to be the professor's, for the next 4 years. So I decided to go off and work for myself with a master's degree. And I worked at Intel for 3.5 years. And this was going to be my life, right? Like, it wasn't a doctor, lawyer, or a dentist, but like, mom and dad would settle for engineer. Right? Like, they're not going to complain about that. And so, like, I had this, like, exactly kind of hitting the roadmap as mom and dad wanted. And along the way, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I realized, whoa, you don't have to work for money. Oh. There's another way. And so I read that book, and 3 of my best friends who I went to school with, who, one's my state senator, one's got a company he's trying to sell for $80 million. Another guy had a company that got bought, right? So, like, these are 3 of my friends that I grew up with, and we started a company to buy rentals because we were Rich Dad Poor Dad. And along the way, I met a real estate broker, got totally distracted, right? Shiny object syndrome. I am an entrepreneur at heart. So in buying rental properties, I met a broker. It's like, hey, I like what you do. What do you do exactly? Oh, I just talk to people and hang out. I was like, okay. And how much do you make? Like, more than 6 figures. Like, okay. So he just hangs out all day and he makes like $100,000 plus. I work at Intel and I'm making 70,000 with a master's degree. Like, there's a mismatch here, right? This is not what I was taught growing up. And so this is when I started my entrepreneur journey. I got my real estate license 2.5 weeks. People think I'm lying when I say that, but I did. Wow. And then right when I got my real estate license, I submitted my 2 weeks notice and I went all in real estate in May of 2007, which was really terrible timing. So that's the beginning of my entrepreneurial journey.
How old were you when you read Rich Dad Poor Dad?
I was probably 25 or 26. I'd say probably like maybe even 24. But this is the time we're reading about leverage and like reading Multiple Streams of Income by Robert E. Allen.
That's awesome.
So buy rental properties. And I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read Multiple Streams of Income. I read all these other books. But like in 2005, I look around, I was like, there's just no way this can continue. Yeah. There's no way this can continue. And then in 2007, like, F it, right? I mean, clearly the party is never going to end. All right, let's go for it. And the party ended.
right when you got in. And so tell us that. So you had basically built your whole life up to be an engineer, right? You were following your parents' blueprint, and then all of a sudden you decided that you were going to go out and do real estate after you read Rich Dad Poor Dad. Like, that message really connected with you. It connected with me. I know it's connected with so many people out there as well. And then you got into the real estate game as an agent, right? 2007. So tell us your experience. Yeah.
Well, it was horrendous. It was terrible.
Describe horrendous.
So here's the thing, right? Like, when you have a job, you have these expectations, right? You have to be in this office by this time. You have to get this much done. And you have to submit your reports, and you have to be out this time. Maybe you got to check in, check out, and so on. When you work for yourself, there's no structure. So whatever structure you put in place is your structure. And I never learned the skills needed to run a business. So my first, I don't know, 1.5 to 2 years, completely irresponsible with my time. And my 2008 was my very first year. And that first year, my expenses exceeded my revenue by $50,000. So on my 1040 that I submit to the IRS, it was negative $50,000. The accountant, I remember when he did my return, he's like, I'm so sorry. but I still need to charge you for this return, right? And so this is what happens when you don't have structure, where you don't have a process, you don't understand the necessities of running a business. And I ran that model as a solopreneur up until about 2010, 2011, because at that time, I was doing what we were supposed to do, as self-employed. But Kiyosaki wrote another book talking about the 4 quadrants. And there's the employee, and then there's the self-employed, and then there's business owner, and there's investor. And I thought being self-employed was where you wanted to be, but that's not where you want to be. Or maybe that's where you start, but that's not where you want to stay. You want to move over to business owner. And it wasn't until 2010, 2011 when I finally hired a coach, and that kind of opened up my eyes. So from 2007 to about 2010, I was too smart for a coach. I knew it all. I could read the books. Why would I ever pay anybody to teach me anything? Obviously, it's a scam, right? Like, if they're so successful, why would they teach it to me? Like, we ask these things, right? We have these thoughts. And I was that same guy for several years. And it was really more like a Hail Mary when I hired a coach, because I was like, if I don't figure this out soon, I'm going to be in a lot of trouble. So I hired a coach, and hiring a coach is the day I went from self-employed to business owner. It was when I finally understood the value of hiring employees to do things that you either don't want to do or suck at, right? So like, that's the first thing. And then the second thing is focusing on revenue generating activity. So if I can have someone take care of all the administrative stuff, then I can take care of the most important stuff. I can take care of the things that actually bring money into the business. There's a guy, I remember when I was starting early in my career, and I swear to God, 40 hours a week, this guy was working on his website, and I checked that website recently. It's parked at GoDaddy, right? It's not even a website anymore. But, understanding the principles of spending all your time in income generating activities. It's so common sense now that we know it, but I didn't have that knowledge in the first 2.5, 3 years of my business.
Yeah.
So
what were some of the was it a message, or was it just simply the act of like pulling your credit card out of your wallet to like pay for the coach, that you knew that you needed to hire people? It just needed that kind of that push over the edge? Or was it something that he gave you, like he broke some of your limiting beliefs? Like, kind of what was that transition when you hired that first coach that allowed you to scale?
Really, it was modeling other successful people. So I was aware that other people had employees, right? Obviously, you have to know that, right? And I could see the people that were successful have employees, but it didn't click until I joined the coaching program and I looked around, and everyone that had the kind of success I wanted had a team that had process, that had procedures. It wasn't until I looked around, right? It wasn't even the coach that I got that message from, right? I mean, he mentioned it, he talks about it, but like when he's talking about it, you're like, yeah, whatever. Like, he's selling me something, right? Yeah. But when you look around and everyone that has the kind of success you want has a pretty common theme, then you're like, okay, I need to do what they're doing.
Got you. So here's, I mean, this it actually adds up, right? Coming from that Asian background, it's kind of it's what we're talking about is delegation, right? As a business owner, it's delegation. But if you're raised to basically do everything on your own, and it usually ends up, there's kind of like this cultural motif that it means that you're not good enough to handle it on your own. Mm-hmm. And I actually completely relate with that, because it's something that I had to understand going into entrepreneurial space. And just like you, like, I graduated summa cum laude with my bachelor's. I graduated summa cum laude with my master's. And then coming into this space, everything's like total rewire of the brain to do it right. Mm-hmm. And then I also wasn't taught those systems, those skills to be a business owner. And then now, as I'm like learning and getting better and better at it, it's like, great, I have to rewire like an entire culture of teaching sometimes at some points. But I want to know, from 2007 to about 2010, you basically started to become an entrepreneur. And then you just didn't have the right traction because you weren't cementing your schedule the right way. I mean, did that at all cause any conflict in the family? Because they kind of raised you to be, you followed a perfect path, right? Scholarship after scholarship.
It didn't cause any conflicts at home with my parents. Like, they thought I was wasting my life away. But I remember, like, when I told them I was quitting, they're like, "Why would you quit?" It's like, you do realize, like, your parents were merchants, right? And dad, you worked for your mom and driving her around, right? And I just recently learned this. I didn't even know this until a couple weeks ago. My mom helped run her dad's store when he was on lunch breaks. Like, you guys were the epitome of this, you know? Like, you guys, it wasn't until you guys came to America that this whole thing, like, your kids got to go to college, get good grades to get it, you know, get a good job and so on. So like that whole programming, I don't know exactly where it came from because it obviously didn't come from our family. But then as far as like the effective delegation, I mean, or the structure, what I did not having structure is I would work really long hours. So I, you know, between 2007 and 2010, I was doing short sales. I was doing bank properties, right? I was working with Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Fannie Mae, in helping them foreclose on people, right? I would do the cash for keys, knock on their doors, like, hey, you got foreclosed on, you know, how much time do you need to move out? So I did all those things. And part of the responsibilities of that is actually having to give a bank an updated CMA every 2 weeks. And that was what I would do from like 10 p.m. till 2 a.m. From 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., I would do all the CMAs, right? Cool. So I would go to bed at 2:30, wake up at 7:30, 8 o'clock, go run the day. And then from like, you know, 9 a.m. to like 5 p.m. was like regular real estate stuff. Maybe show some houses, go home, have dinner with the wife, and then get back on the computer and then do CMAs, work on my website, do SEO. I actually had pretty decent SEO for a little bit, right? Do my own pay-per-click. So I did all those things after hours. But yeah, there was definitely no structure. It was kind of like do it when you can. And unfortunately, I'm a procrastinator. So like I always turned everything in right before it was due. That's how I manage my schedule. Just make myself so busy that everything was always on a deadline to get things done.
Yeah. Well, I think it's important what you said right there because, you know, it took you 3-4 years before you even hired your first coach, but along the way, you were still learning skill sets that you didn't even know that you needed to know, that you needed to learn, that you needed to craft. And I think a lot of times when people are just getting into, whether it be real estate or whether it be any other business, they fail to realize how many different skill sets, how many different things that they need to learn, and the different person, the different beliefs that they have to change in order to become the Steve Trangs, you know, the Pace Morbys, all the successful people out there. Mm-hmm. And I think you just said it without actually saying it, like how long it actually takes when you just like put yourself in a situation that you know that you want to be successful, you know you have the potential to be successful. Your intentions are good, but ultimately it still takes time to learn those skills because that's what it is.
Well, and also we're in a different age right now, right? Like right now with social media and everything else, the way we compete for attention, the way we compete for eyeballs is putting out content out for free, right? That's the way we compete right now for attention. And the great blessing for everyone else is that they get a lot of stuff that we paid a lot of money for and we're giving it for free. And I've got no bones about that. The only reason why I bring this up is when I started, there was none of that, right? I said, hey, Sam, can I buy you coffee? For what? Right? Hey, Logan, what are you doing in marketing? I'm not telling you, right? Like that was the environment I cut my teeth in. I want to say until like 2015, 2016, like there wasn't really a shift to where people are blogging and podcasting and this and that. So I grew up I didn't grow up, I'm like dating myself, but like it was a very scarcity mindset for a very long time.
I mean, I'm really glad that you said that because now with the information era and content and all these things, it's almost become like a race or a competition because in the search for more eyeballs, it's like who can give more value, who can basically give more secret sauce. And I'm blessed, right? Because I coming in less than a year in this game, like I reaped the benefits of that. So I mean that just makes me think of, your timeline not having that information. If I had to deal with that same, like if it was the same kind of culture around this industry and there wasn't so much free content out there weren't people freely sharing everything, I'd shudder to think what my timeline would be like. I never considered that. That's wild.
Yeah. So, but there's a downside to that as well. Like for you guys, with how much information is out there, everything is harder, right? Like, because I was doing all my own PPC back starting 2011, 2012. I was doing all my own PPC and, like competing against Sean Terry, right? Like I'm spending $2 a click, $12 a lead, like I wish I had that today.
Yeah, it's amazing.
So it was, if you can get in front of the homeowner, you basically got the deal. That's kind of how it worked, right? Yeah. Today, you get in front of the homeowner. Well, what makes you special? Why should I talk to you? right? So you're competing against like 6 or 7 or maybe 10 different people. And that's why I'm incredibly blessed that I have a sales training program, because sales is more important today than it was 10 years ago. 10 years ago, you didn't have to be good at sales. 10 years ago, if you can get their phone number, you got it, right?
Yeah.
There was no batch skip tracing. There wasn't prop stream or this or that. It was, if you can get in front of the homeowner, you made money. So I would say there's pros and cons for the different environments.
Yeah. Well, so kind of describe. So you joined that coaching program. What, 2011? Is that when you said you joined it?
2010. I want to say 2010, but it was 2010, 2011, around there.
Okay. And so you joined that. That's when you started to actually put people in places and start to scale a little bit. So describe that journey from 2010, 2011, even like maybe up to 2015, 2016.
Yeah.
So what's going on in your business?
This is a time where I was learning. So I was already semi-successful as a realtor, right? Because I was doing foreclosures and whatever. But this is a time where foreclosures were stopping, right? And things were kind of changing. And that's the reason why I got into coaching, because I saw that foreclosure was stopping. Well, that's been my business model. That's changing. I got to pivot now, right? Kind of like a lot of people right now maybe are pivoting to creative. And so at this time, I was learning how to write job descriptions, right? Job ads that were compelling. Because if you go to LinkedIn or whatever, to Indeed to look at job ads, like they all pretty much look the same, right? So I was learning how to write quality ad copy for hiring, right? Learning how to interview people. So learning how to ask the effective questions to understand their core values, this and that. And I, fortunately, with the coaching I had, like I already had those templates. But what I didn't have was trying to figure out how to manage people, how to hold them accountable. God, holding accountability conversations, right? Like, who coaches on that? And so, like, I'm having to go through this and like, hey, like, you're not hitting your numbers. What's going on? Or you understand, like, we have to be here by 9 a.m., right? Like, I don't understand why you're showing up hungover at 9:30, but like, we can't keep doing this. So, like, learning how to manage people for the next few years was probably the most challenging things. Having to actively look for the next best thing as far as CRM, lead sources, and this and that. Because remember, I'm still a realtor this whole time. So I had to find like the best programs, right? So as around this time, I was learning about Real Geeks or some of the other platforms. But then again, learning pay-per-click, learning how to run effective ad strategies, reviewing my campaigns, right, late at night, doing SEO, managing people, all the while, right, having to run a brokerage because I was a partner in a brokerage. Man, yeah, I guess there were just a whole lot of different things I had to learn as far as skills. I wasn't good at the financial skills yet. That was much later. So even though I was making a lot of money, I wasn't keeping any of it. You guys may be familiar with that. Like, I make a lot of money. Where is it? So it was much later when I figured out the financial component. But I learned marketing. I wasn't good at sales. I learned marketing and I learned hiring, recruiting in that phase. That was the phase of my career where I was learning marketing and building a team, but not really leading or sales.
Yeah. So
go for it.
I was going to say there's one thing that you just said right there, which I think people are like, wait, they're scratching their head. And it's like, I wasn't really good at sales. And I would say that's the thing that most people would probably know you from, who maybe not in the real estate industry. Like, they might know you just from like being the sales trainer. So kind of touch on that a little bit about maybe early days of not being a natural born salesman, or just kind of your thoughts on sales training, what your personal journey, and then how you got to become maybe arguably the best sales trainer in the real estate industry today.
Yeah, so I appreciate that. So I think the reason why I feel qualified to be a quality sales trainer is because I suck at sales, right? So remember, I have an engineering background. Yeah. Engineers are not natural born salespeople. They are the opposite. And so because I was so awful at sales, I literally have to study harder sales than anybody else. So because I was so bad at it, I had to learn all the different components in it. And so I can say, like, when there's someone selling something, you see what he did there? That's exactly what he's doing. It's this technique. He did this and this and this, right? Here's why he did what he did. It's the reason why Michael Jordan can never be a good basketball coach. He's just good, right? Like, you can't teach a 44-inch vertical, right? Yeah. You just have it or you don't. And so for me, because I was so bad at sales, I had to work on my craft harder than anybody else, is the reason why I feel qualified to teach at sales, right? Is the reason why because I had to learn it and apply it, right? And say, okay, now this works, right? I'm actually testing theories, right? You read it in a book, you read it in a course, you learn about it in a course, and you go apply it, and you go say, okay, this works, this doesn't work. When I tried this, this failed. So I would say that that's the reason why I feel qualified. The other thing too is we have to remember we all are everyone's natural sales style is the way they want to buy. So if you're the kind of person that likes to go into like 25 stores in price comparison, then you will naturally, when you're selling, get people to be very logical, think about it, and then you're going to accept it when they say they need to comparison shop. Yeah. If you're the kind of person that goes to a grocery store and if you don't have a list, you're buying everything, then the way you're going to sell is you're going to expect a signed contract before you walk out the door, right? So you're going to have a very different selling style. The kind of person that's going to walk into, a grocery store and walk out with like 2 gallons of ice cream on top of everything else is actually a more natural salesperson because they're going to expect people to just buy, right? Yeah. So it's that reason that I had to take everything I knew about communicating and flip it around, look at it from multiple different angles. And that's the reason why I wouldn't say the best sales trainer, but the reason why I feel qualified to train sales.
Wow. That just, I literally the entire time I'm like, what do I do at the grocery store? And I realized I was there yesterday and like, I had a little list. I actually had a list and now I'm like, God dang it. I wonder if that impacts anything.
When I go to the grocery store, I need to buy 3 things. I walk in there, I buy 3 things. Like, that's it, right? Like I go in, I go out.
Yeah,
but
I'm the same way.
But there are people that are like, if they don't have a list, God help them.
Yeah. Wow. My financial situation just got called into question because of the grocery store. Every time I go, it's like, even with you know what? I had the list and then I realized that there was like 4 other things that were totally not on the list, totally breaking the budget. Wow. Well, let me ask this. As someone who is maybe not natural, like a total natural at sales, and you had to like basically get into the science of it, right? Because at the end of the day, if you iron it out, sales can be systematized and it can be a functioning process.
Engineering.
There you go. So at what point did you decide you wanted to start helping others with sales?
It was actually at Max Maxwell's event, We Live 19. So I was incredibly honored when Max Maxwell asked me to come speak at his event in Dallas. And this is when Jamil and Paige are like, Steve, if you're going to speak on stage in front of 1,000 people, we want to be there with you. Like, how awesome is that, right?
That's awesome.
So we had those 2. We had Jesse Burrell, Annie Dragonova, Ivo Dragonova, right? The guys that own Batch. And then Bryant Apples as well. And we all flew together as the Phoenix crew. It was an incredible time, incredible memories. So I spoke on stage, right, in front of 1,000 people, explaining how we run our sales process, because Phoenix is pretty tough. And after that presentation, I had so many people reach out to me like, hey, that presentation was really helpful. Hey, I used Steve's line here and I got this signed contract. And a bunch of other people like, hey, like if that's what we got from you for like 45 minutes, what else can we get from you? And like, it sounds so cliche because so many coaches say like, I created this coaching program because everyone asked me for it, right? It's really cliche. I get it. But legitimately, I had a lot of people saying like, hey, can you do and teach what you taught for 45 minutes up there and like give it to us over a day? Can you put it together in a different format? And so I was like, if they'll pay for it, of course I'll do it. Like that'd be stupid not to. So, like if you look at every information marketing program out there, there's like, see if you can sell it. If you can sell it, then go build it. Well, I didn't have to see if I can go sell it. I spoke in front of everybody and they're like, we want more. I was like, okay, then we'll make more.
Yeah. And so for anybody who's listening and is like been hiding under a rock, like this is one of the things that Steve offers. And if you go to that link right there, Steve actually has on there his sales masterclass. He has, what do you have? Live training. You have weekly
live
training
next week.
You have workshops. Like you have so much stuff that, again, like it fits everyone's buyer persona and fits everyone's needs. And again, whether you want something that's continuity, something ongoing, or whether you want like, something more intensive, like a workshop, like everything is right there for you. So again, like go to that link and go check it out. Sales training, like again, like if you're in the game of real estate and you're looking to sell, like everyone needs to sell, click that link, please.
Everyone needs to sell, right? In real estate or not, everyone needs to learn how to sell.
Everyone does.
So
whether you're a transaction
so
coordinator, you're an integrator, everyone needs to sell.
I mean, think about it. As a transaction coordinator, you have to deal with a crazy boss, right?
Yep.
That's us. So here's the question I asked. I was actually talking to someone yesterday. They're like, what's a reasonable price to pay, or like, should I invest in a program? And I asked them, like, well, every deal that you do, like, how much do you make? And they're like, 5,000, 15,000, 25,000. Like, okay, that's cool. So every deal you close, you just how much you make. Yeah. Okay. Every deal you don't close, how much is that costing you? And that was an uncomfortable question. Then it's like, well, if it's costing you this much, does it make sense to not buy our program? So that's the question that you got to answer for yourself. But the way I would look at it is like, can you afford not to get a program? But that's me.
Yeah,
that's a phenomenal sales line in and of itself, right there. Like that would have got me. I'd be like, "Here's what, take the card, just take it, just do it."
Yeah,
yeah. I don't think most people understand that. They always focus on the game, but like, what are you missing out when you don't? Like, how many sales miss out? How many lives are you not able to impact because you don't have the skill sets to get a deal across the finish line? And it's not just you personally and your family, but even that seller. Like, the reason that you're on a phone call with them is they have a problem, they have a situation, and if you can't convince them, if you can't show them that there's a better way, you can't help them solve their problem.
Yeah, you can't serve them, right? And then most people get into this business. I mean, a lot of us get into this business for money, but a lot of us, once we get past the money, realize like it's more than just the money. It's actually fulfilling. It's like rewarding to help people. And if you can't sell them on a vision for the homeowner, then you're kind of hurting them. So you're allowing someone to suffer longer than they need to.
And so we talked about this in the very beginning, and we definitely skipped over a little bit, but you grew up in an Asian family. You grew up, destined to be a doctor, lawyer, ended up being an engineer, got into real estate. But where in this journey did you become a baller? Where did that come from?
I was actually talking with someone about this over the weekend. I'm the only one. So I have 5 younger brothers. I'm the only one that's into sports. And I was thinking maybe it's because my older cousin, when I was a kid, wouldn't let me play with him, right? Like, he was, I don't know, 6 years older, 8 years older, and he's hanging out with his friends playing basketball in the front yard. I was like, I want to play, like, get out of here, right? Like, you little kid, go back crying to your mom. I'm thinking that's probably the reason why, is because I was told I couldn't. But I played basketball my whole life. I didn't make it past first cuts in 7th grade, 8th grade, or freshman year of high school. Right? I tried out every year for 3 straight years. Didn't make it past first cuts once. But I was always passionate about it, like, looking back in middle school, and again, like, there's no indicator of how good you are, right? But like, I was pretty good at like, knowing where the ball is going to go and getting there before anybody else. So I was good at, stealing the ball on a regular basis. I just couldn't make a layup, right, to save my life. But I was really good at stealing the ball. And then it kind of progressed to like, playing a lot in high school. And then I think going to Arizona State University, it's not renowned for its engineering program, but I got to tell you, their basketball courts, like, it's amazing games. So I played a lot of pickup ball. I mean, there were times where like the Mercury would play. And, like, you think like, who cares, right? They're WNBA. Let me tell you, those WNBA players can play. Like, it was embarrassing what they would do to us. And then, graduating, going to Intel, I would regularly leave Intel early on Mondays so I can get the Lifetime Fitness by 4 p.m. Because like, if you weren't on the course by 4 p.m., you were waiting. And like, we played with like Anquan Bolden, Donovan McNabb. Like, these are guys that were really good.
Wow.
And I'm not going to sit here and tell you I held my own, but I was on the court, right? And I was playing against them. I wasn't playing well, but it's always been a passion, and it's one of those things that I put into 10,000 hours. So if you leave me open, I'm hitting the 3.
That's awesome.
And I'm going to hustle, but I'm not the most athletically gifted, but you're going to earn every point you get.
It's amazing. Yeah. And the reason I bring that up, if you guys don't follow Steve on Instagram, he definitely makes lots of sports references. Even I've seen a couple videos, maybe it was a reel of him actually playing ball, hitting some threes, right? 1 take 3, right? 1 take reel. That's all I needed.
Yeah. I think I made like 30 in a row, right? I think I uploaded that.
That's amazing. So again, if you guys are under a rock, go follow Steve on Instagram. Definitely post a lot of sports things. Love your memes too. They're so funny.
Appreciate it.
And which brings me to my next point of, we talked about your podcast, the Real Estate Disruptors podcast, again, one of the most prolific podcasts in the industry. Everyone talks about it as being like, they want to get on it, right? They want to be on there. You get tons of views, tons of traction on there. And so share with us a little bit about your vision behind how that whole started, and even your vision of where you're going with that into the future now.
So when I started it, there was a couple of things I had in mind, but the most important thing to me was I wanted to bridge this community between wholesalers and realtors, because I wear both hats, right? And I wore both hats for a very long time. And I sit on both sides, and like each side hates the other side, and it makes no sense, right? Yep. It's like the best reference I can give is like in Ireland, right? Like the Catholics and the Protestants, like they hate each other. They're like 99% the same, but they hate each other. And so realtors and wholesalers, they do the same thing. They market to homeowners and they help them get their home sold. And there's transaction coordinators, there's inside sales, there's outside sales, there's escrow officers. And we got to find buyers. Like, we're all doing the same thing. We just do it a little bit differently. And so I was trying to marry this community. And after about 8 episodes, I just like gave up that adventure, right? Because I could see very clearly I was having no impact on that. So that was like the first thing. The second thing was when I started my brokerage in 2013, I made the declaration I want to create 13 millionaires through our brokerage. And then once I started the podcast in 2018, I was like, well, if I'm gonna have a national platform, then I should create 100 millionaires. So I said that from episode 1, I'm on a mission to create 100 millionaires. And so for me, I want to leave a lasting impact. You know, like one of the greatest things that someone could say to honor me is that they say, like, I helped them accomplish X. Like, I love those messages. Those messages keep me going, right? Pays causes emotional income. Mm-hmm. That is far more rewarding to me than like, I don't know, like, let me buy you lunch. Like, that's not rewarding at all. But like, you know, hey, Steve, I was able to accomplish this because of your podcast. Like, for me, that is the most rewarding thing, most rewarding message, and very fulfilling.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so tell us about your journey from, obviously you started with the idea that you wanted to create a mend between wholesalers and real estate agents. And then after, again, about eight episodes, you realized that was a lost cause. Right?
That's not a battle for me to fight.
Pick better battles, right? Swim with the current. Yeah. And so what is your intention with it now that you've been doing it for 4 years? Is that about right?
Yeah, it's more than 4 years now. And I'm going to continue doing it. At some point, we're going to add some, at some point it's going to be just disruptors, where it's just, you know, they become a millionaire through other avenues. Yeah. We started with real estate. You know, like, I could have just gone like broad initially, but strategically as a marketer, I know I have to pick a niche, right? So I picked a niche, which is real estate, because that's what I know. But I'm not so much in love with real estate as I am in love with entrepreneurship, right? Capitalism. That's what my family's fled twice, right? The communists, we fled communism twice. So I'm absolutely in love with capitalism. So I love entrepreneurship. And so at some point I would love to talk about just, you know, becoming wealthy. But I recognize that in order to get there, I had to hone in on a niche, get that going. And once I get that going, then I can branch out further. So like a couple weeks ago, I think we're number 18 in iTunes under careers. You know, that kind of fluctuates up and down. So like, I want to get to number 1. And then once I get to number 1 careers, then we'll have the courage to go after investing, because careers is less competitive than investing. And then once we're number 1 in investing, then at that point, we can maybe switch to just general entrepreneurship versus just investing.
Logan mentioned this, right? It's kind of like it would be a massive badge of honor for pretty much anyone in our industry to get on Real Estate Disruptors. And truthfully, there's a lot of people, you know, making waves in this industry, and it seems like there's so many more just coming out every year. So many people who are just obviously disrupting this industry in a big way. Mm-hmm. For you, strategically, I mean, are you looking for a specific type of person? Like, I want to know the psychology of, you know, what do you look for in bringing someone onto that podcast? Because you get to be as picky as you want. And I'm really interested to hear that.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things I'm looking for. One, do you have an inspirational story? Right? Like, the less reason you should be here, the better. Right? So do you have an inspirational story? Do you have a business that's repeatable, someone can model? Right? Because if someone's listening to it, I want them to be able to model this. Not to say that all of them fit that criteria, but, you know, can someone listen to this episode and start doing what you're doing? So I think that's the second one. Third one is not as critical, but are you likable? Right? Are you someone that, you know, I can like actually talk to afterwards and like actually have a beer with? Not that I drink a lot of beer, but like I do want that. Like I don't want this to be like a total one-way conversation, you know, like you see some of these podcasts and like you could totally see the guest came on with an agenda and like the host loses control of the show. I don't want that, right? I want a show where like we can have an interesting conversation, sharing your journey, and by the end, everyone can, if they so choose, copy what you've done. You know, I want this to be a little entertaining. I want it to be inspirational, and I want it to be very educational.
It's amazing. And so just to remind everybody, very much just like Steve's Real Estate Disruptor podcast, like this is a live show. So if you guys do have questions, drop them down below. Maybe we'll get to answer one of those questions by the end of this Origin Story podcast. But Steve, let me ask you this. You talked about your number 18 in careers. What does it take for you to get number one?
So get to what's that?
So right now you're number 18, you said, you know, obviously it fluctuates, but that's where you,
yeah. Got it.
What does it take for you to get to number one?
I think it's going to be more subscribers, right? It's got to be more compelling content where it's shared more. We've learned that 5-star reviews do absolutely nothing. So we stopped asking for 5-star reviews. So really it's the sharing of it, the virality of it. I mean, we just had a team meeting. We're going to create more content really around our shows, you know, like being intentional that when we record on Wednesday, by Thursday, at some point Thursday, we have a reel or a TikTok from yesterday's show. So that it's like, hey, did you like this episode? Did you like this snippet? Watch yesterday's show. Like really timely versus like, because right now we have it like I record the podcast and like you might see a reel in a week or 2 weeks, 3 weeks, but it's not that the content's stale, but it's less exciting to kind of jump back into it. So I think just being more intentional with the media content we create. But, you know, we've been really fortunate. We've been going crazy on YouTube. You know, we had like, I want to say almost 300,000 views on YouTube last month. And I think that just kind of leads into the iTunes and Spotify. Yeah,
it's amazing. And, you know, I've been fortunate enough to be in your studio and kind of see your setup. Like you got a lot of money, man, sitting in that studio, right? Like you're going all out, and I can tell that you're serious about this journey. It's not just like, yeah, it'd be nice if I was number one or if I had a decent podcast, but I can just tell by how much you've invested in just your studio and the equipment and just the overall experience that like you're serious. And I really respect that a lot.
Well, appreciate that, Logan. But that goes back to me being broken, right? Sam can understand this. You're either number one or you're not, right? Like that whole thing with Ricky Bobby, like either you're first or you're last. Like that's what we grew up with. Yeah. That was, I mean, Sam said he got 2 degrees. That is what's programming us. Like anything less than the best, like why are you wasting your time? And so I'm not sure this is the right way to live your life, but that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, I was honestly wondering if I was a failure for not like, you know, going to Harvard and getting a law degree on top of that, maybe like a PhD after that. But Logan's right, you know, just looking at the Real Estate Disruptors podcast, the studio setup alone, just in lighting in the background. I mean, it's one of those things that always blows my mind. And every time that I watch Real Estate Disruptors, because, you know, our podcast is still relatively fresh. I mean, we just started this year, you know, not so long ago. And it is such a massive, I'm so sorry. What was that?
Good for you guys for starting it. Because it takes courage.
Thank you so much. It was, you know, this guy right here absolutely just bootstrapped me in. And one day he's like, hey, Sam, like, I like you. You know what? You're doing a podcast with me. I'm like, I'm doing what? It's like, it's a podcast. It's starting next week. But 100%, you know, Real Estate Disruptors, the production quality of it and the intentionality behind, I mean, even the questions that you ask, how you ask them. I mean, it's, you know, we talk about your ability in sales and how you dissect sales calls. Just seeing how you intentionally ask certain things and what it leads to, it always blows my mind each time. And I'm like, dang, I got to get so much better at this game. It's amazing.
Yeah. It's the same exact thing we do at a homeowner's appointment, right? If I hear something, we're going to keep picking at it until we find out what we need to find out. Like, I can't let this go, right? Like, there's obviously something here. I'm going to keep polishing this until we find it.
So I have to ask this question and it's always going to be a loaded question. And I'm sure you've been asked it before a lot of times. On Real Estate Disruptors, you've had phenomenal human beings on there, right? Not just who kill it as entrepreneurs, but they go out and affect great change. I mean, is there someone that you're, is there one person that would take that crown of you being the most proud of from their journey from starting to where they're at now?
Yeah. So this is a loaded question. I've gotten a few times, and my answer has always been the same, and it's Haim. Haim Aman. He's back in Israel now. But he's a guy, because we all get into real estate, for the same reason. We want more time freedom, financial freedom. Someone recently put it, relationship freedom, right? Like you can do whatever you want, whenever you want, live a life however you design it, right? That's why we all get into this business. But once we get into the business, we get super distracted, and we start trying to do bigger and better and scaling and competition, right? It's this giant pissing contest. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but we all get caught up in this trap. And Haim is the only one I know that actually survived it unscathed, right? He got into this business to have more time freedom, financial freedom, and he stayed the course all the way, still to this day, stayed the course. He picks up his kids from school every single day, right? I drop my kids off at school every single day, but I don't pick them up from school every day, right? And he's picking them up every single day, wearing flip-flops and shorts, and just spending all the time he wants with his kids. Oh, and prior to COVID, right? He went to every World Cup, and he goes to every Niners playoff game. Like, what an amazing life. And it's clarity of purpose, and then doing what you said you're going to do when you started.
So the message in there is you highlight him and everybody's listening. I think, again, let me just share what I took from that is that you stay focused, right? Understand what's important to you, and don't get distracted by what Sam's doing or what Steve's doing or what somebody else is doing. Like, stay true to what your values are and what you actually want to get out of this journey. Yep. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, like you had a game plan when you started. Now we're not saying you can't modify your game plan, right? But remember why you started. Be very clear on your purpose. I partnered up with some guys who I respect a lot. They're mentors of mine in another way, and their big thing is like getting closer to your goal versus getting more. And we're all chasing more, but like if you say that you're doing this so you can have more time with your kids, but you're not actively looking for ways to spend more time with your kids, you're lying to yourself, right? He says you're being an a-hole. I say you're lying to yourself. So if you're not doing all the things you said you can do, because some of us say, like, I'm doing this now so I have more time with my family later on. That later on, A, may never come, or B, when it does come, the kids don't care about you because you didn't care about them when they were younger, right? So you talk about, there's one of the, I wouldn't say it's an amazing movie, but it's a movie that I think is very relevant for all of us, is The Greatest Showman, right? With Hugh Jackman. Yeah. And there's a scene where like the circus is wildly successful. He's accomplished more than his wildest dreams. And he puts it all on the line to go chase this opera singer thing, right? Yeah. And my daughter is like talking to me like, why did he do that? That was her question to me. Why did he do that? And my answer to her is because he's lying to himself. He says he's doing this for his family, but he's doing it for himself. And until we realize why we're doing what we're doing, we might, be going off course.
That's really interesting. So going on that point and being inside your office, like you have a lot of things going. We talked about the podcast. Now we talked about the sales training. You have a wholesale business. Mm-hmm. You have your hands in lots of fires. You have a family, right? Mm-hmm. You like the ball. And so like, what are you working towards with all these different things you have going on, all these different verticals? Mm-hmm. What's the big thing that you're working towards?
That's a great question, right? Because that goes back to me not having clarity of my own self. And so for me, because I am chasing more, right? And I think, again, it comes back to being broken. I actually met with a professional. She's not a therapist, but, she's a...
When you say more, what do you like? When you say more, like, what do you...
More is just like more growth? Deals, more escrows, more money, more transactions, bigger office, number one podcast, best sales trainer. Like just chasing all these accomplishments, right? It's achievement addiction. Yeah. Right. So for me, like what's next, I am constantly chasing more. I would say the slight difference is that I'm very clear that I know what I want and why I'm doing it. And I'm never sacrificing time away from my family, right? So I want to achieve as much as possible without sacrificing my family. So I am there to take them to school every single morning. I'm taking them to kung fu practice, piano practice, swim lessons, right? Like I'm with them. So I'm very clear that's what I want. So I'm trying to do as much as humanly possible in less than 45 hours a week. So I don't have a very clear, like, I want to be here. I'm very much enjoying the journey. I did have, that achievement addiction for a long time. Like, I'll be happy when, and I realized that doesn't ever happen. So now I'm happy. I'm doing what I want. I'm spending time with my family, and I get to do what I want to do every single day, which is work on my craft and grow this.
Yeah, that's amazing. And we can see in the comments that people really resonated with that a lot, right? And I think it's important, especially because we're talking about one specific thing pretty much, right? We're talking about business, but you just described it in a way that like business is not everything. It's like, I want to be successful, but at the expense of my family? Absolutely not, right? At the expense of my health? Absolutely not. At the expense of my sanity and like what fills me up, depends, right? Obviously it depends on everything. Like there's always seasons for all those things that you need to be on your business at expense of your health or your family for a period of time. But is that something that you should be in for an extended period of time?
Yeah. Like we have our seasons where we got to grind, but we just have to remember it's a season. It's not a career.
This is wild. I love this. So Logan was the first person ever that actually had never clicked with me. Earlier this year, he came to California to hang out with me for a little bit, and he taught me, and I never heard it this way. He taught me about that people go through seasons, just like you just said right now, and it kind of hit me in a weird way because I'm a young guy. I'm not married. I don't have kids. I just have dogs. And Logan basically has his clan, his tribe, his wife, and his beautiful daughters. And I've never seen, up close and close proximity, in the entrepreneurial world, there's the grind phase. And a lot of times that grind phase, unknowing, maybe we're not conscious of it, but it comes at the expense of family time, the memories that we'll never be able to get back. So I have a tremendous respect for Logan because something, and this is a clarity point to what you're talking about, is he has this uncanny ability I think a lot of people don't have yet, in saying no to things that can make him a lot of money and he'd be really good at. So Logan doesn't wholesale. He is not a wholesaler at all. He understands every facet of it. He probably can hit the ground running in it and just destroy the game. He'd be a real estate disruptor in wholesale in no time. But he doesn't do it because I think he understands that it would come at a certain cost. So
it's gonna be a grind.
This is just like epiphany for me. And I'm like, I don't even have kids yet. And it's, I'm just like, I'm prepping. This is just amazing wisdom. So guys, thank you both for this. This is great.
Yeah. So Steve, actually on that point, like, and again, because the majority of our audience is people who are either new in the game of real estate or maybe they've been in it for, less than 2 years. What advice would you give to them as they're first starting and giving them some perspective on what they have to do now versus what they get to do in 15, 20 years? And is it worth it? Is it actually worth it?
So it's going to suck most of the time, right? Like 95% of the time, probably, but it's 100% worth it. I mean, I had to let someone go yesterday, I had a business divorce 3 months ago now, like 2.5 months ago, right? Like there are gonna be some trying times. Make no bones about it, but it's 100% worth it, right? It's, I mean, what's the alternative, right? Having a boss, like, no thanks. Like that just won't work for me. So what to be prepared for or what you can do, I think, listening to shows like this, I think it's fantastic, right? Having Sam, Logan, a community, I think Sub2's done a pretty good job building a community, having community, but also being aware of where you are in your journey, and then finding the people that can help you get to the next step. You've heard this said many times before, like being the dumbest person in the room. Like you got to look at when you're getting started, what's the first thing you got to like, how do I find my next deal? How do I find my next deal? Right. So that's marketing. You have to learn marketing. All right. I found a seller. What do I got to do? Oh, how do I close them? Right. Now you got to learn sales. Yep. Now it's like, okay, I got a deal. I close them. Like now what I do? Now I got to learn dispo. You got to learn escrows. Right. And then once you got that figured out, how do I get better at marketing? How do I get better at leading? How do I get better at finances, right? How do I get better in leveraging relationships? How do I get better in building a larger community? How do I get better at creating content? Like there's so many skills you've got to learn along the way it's just crazy, right? So you just got to make sure you find people that have done what you've done or done what you want to do, and that it resonates with you. Because I love Pace, right? We hung out a lot, but I cannot keep up with that guy. There's just no way I can keep up with that guy, right? There are other people that, that maybe we run at comparable speeds. So you got to find someone that's done what you want to do and also live the life you want to live, right? So Logan, married with kids, right? Seems to have a happy family. If that's what you want, you should find ways to be in Logan's circle, right? I'm not sure if Sam's in the grinding season, but if he is and you're in grinding season, maybe you squad up with Sam, right? You got to find people that are doing what you want to do and either doing it at your level or a little bit better. And if you're not constantly graduating your room, and maybe that's just competitive side in me, if you're not constantly graduating your room you're in, you gotta be, totally satisfied with your results. So again, maybe that's competitive side of me. I'm always trying to graduate the room I'm in.
Yeah.
I have to say this. So 100% in the trenches right now, grinding away. So if there's anyone who's watching and you guys are, new to this journey and you kind of resonate, if you have a family and you're doing this for, this a holistic family life, Logan, 100%. I've spent so much time with him and his amazing family. They teach me so much. But if you resonate with the grinding and what that looks like and working 12, 13, 14-hour days, then 100% I'm your guy. But I love the fact that you said this, and it's one of those things where I know people may not, there's some people who aren't a fan of saying, get into the next big room. And to me, that's the only thing that I care about right now. It's just constantly leveling up your circle, leveling up your room. Now, an element to that, a key to that is don't forget to ever leave behind the people that had a great impact on you. So for me, it's like, no matter what happens, Logan can decide to retire today and never do investing ever again. I refuse to let this man just wander off. Like, he has to come with me no matter what. So I'm resonating a lot with everything that you've been saying today. It's been amazing.
Yeah. And unfortunately, or fortunately, but sadly, is like I've graduated a lot of rooms, I would get into this mastermind. I'm so excited to be in this mastermind. And then after a short period of time, I was like, all right, I am now the authority in this room. I got to go find another room. And I'm like so excited to be in this room. I'm learning so much. And at some point I was like, all right, I am now the authority in this room. And so you keep graduating. And there are elements of that, right, that are bad. There are elements of that, I could be borderline sociopath or it comes across as very uncaring, right? And I've gotten that feedback from people who are like, they felt like I was just a chapter in their story. I'm no longer part of their story. That is other childhood trauma I'm dealing with, right? Going back to the baggage that we had when we first growing up. But at the end of the day, right, I am doing this for me and my family. And even then, even though I'm doing this for me and my family doesn't need me to keep going. So I'm really doing this for me. And that's what I was talking about earlier about having clarity of purpose.
Yeah. I think it's important too, because a lot of people, when they think about getting into the right rooms, they think about one of two camps. They think about peer groups, which is what we're talking about now, right? Relating to peer groups, but also getting into the right room with the head person in charge, with the mentor in there. And a lot of times, in your case, Steve, someone can't just come hang out with you. You're not you've passed that point in your life that in order to get access to Steve, you got to go pull your money out or go work for him. One of the two things, right? But easiest way is going to be just go pay for one of his courses, go pay for him to be your mentor on whatever makes sense for you. But you get so much from that because you have been in the game again, like Sam just said, he's in grinding mode, and you've been in the game for, I'm trying to do math real quick, 15
plus years.
Yeah, right. And so you could spend 15 years and you could go through that same grind that Steve did, or you can just pay him money and you can just condense all that into a weekend or a couple weeks or a couple months or a year, a much shorter amount of time. And that is so valuable. It's so valuable. And that's why it's so important that you're out here, right? And I love mentorship. I pay for lots of mentors, and I respect you do it because you don't have to do it. You do it because you're called to do it. It's not something that your type of person, I can just tell that you're called to do it. You want to do it because you want to help, you want to serve, and I just really appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, it is totally fulfilling. And there are people who might say you could just give it away for free, and I could.
Yeah,
I could just give it away for free. But then how can I discern who are the people that are going to take action with it?
Totally.
How can I be sure my message hits the right person? And it's unfortunate. There are people that the message would resonate with and I can help them and they can't afford it. I recognize that.
Yeah.
But there are also people that are willing to pay for it and will take action for it. And so it sucks because I've been on the other side of that, right? I've been on the other side where I didn't have money, where I couldn't afford a coach.
Yeah.
And I was like, why would I pay? Why would I pay for it? So I get that side and it sucks. But at the end of the day, it's a very limited amount of time in a day. And I am trying to accomplish all my goals, like I said, in under 45 hours a week.
Yeah. And but here's the reality is that you put so much free content out there that someone can just consume all your free content for free. And then once they're ready, then they're in a situation that a lot of times it's like those who pay the most attention, right?
Yeah.
One of my other mentors in my nutrition industry, he described it really, really well, and it really resonated with me at like to the point where it's just something that's one of my core beliefs is that someone's transformation is in the transaction. Like as soon as they pull that money out, all of a sudden all the commitment to that thing, especially if it's good, if it's a high enough transaction, their excuses or justifications, the reason why they won't do the little things, the consistency, like it goes away because like I paid too much money for me not to just follow through with what Steve said or whatever the mentor said. And
yeah, I can't not do it.
Exactly. So that's why it's so important. It really is. And so we talked about that. We do have one question here that I'd love your insight on, especially because when you come from the real estate agent world, it's like you said, like you actually have a license, there's regulations or things like that, but wholesaling, there isn't that yet. And so I know that you and Brett Daniels and Pace and Jamil talked about the idea that there's regulations coming to the wholesale industry. And so this question was by Armand. He basically just said, like, have you thought about creating groups to represent wholesalers or advocating for more creative, investor-friendly real estate laws? I know that you're taking action on this. So just curious on what your thoughts are on this moving forward and what is the state?
I think in a perfect world, that'd be awesome. I know Jerry Norton's doing this and he's doing this with the help of Pace and Jamil and Brent and so on. I think in a perfect world, we can make this happen. I think the reality is there's a lot of people that don't like us as wholesalers. And I think we're definitely swimming uphill. All we can do is self-regulate. But at the end of the day, if this becomes regulated, it really doesn't hurt us, right? It hurts the homeowners because the moment we can no longer wholesale, then I have to close on it, right? Because I will find money to close on it. So now that I have to close on it, I have to pay less. Yeah. Because I have to pay less, the homeowner loses. So this idea, and the government will do it because the government will come in and screw it up. But what's going to happen if we make wholesaling illegal, then either it's going to be a licensed activity, right, which is whatever, or as a flipper, I will close on it. And because I have to close on it, I'll have less competition. Because I have less competition, I can buy even deeper. So if they regulate wholesaling, the only person that loses is the homeowner. We that are resourceful will be just fine. It's the same exact thing we saw with payday loans, right? Like they removed the ability to have payday loans in Arizona, right? It was a big deal like 6 years ago. And they finally won, right? Like there's no more payday loans. So what do we have now? Title loans. So now not only is people not able to get payday loans, now they're putting up their cars for money. And then once they lose their car, now they can't work and they've lost their livelihood. So like every time we pass laws, the wrong person loses.
That sums it up. So yet again, the government is, and at the end of the day, it's going to be the government who does it. But in an effort to help the homeowner, they end up screwing the homeowner.
I mean, we saw this with Dodd-Frank Act, right? So, because I did short sales, if you recall. Mm-hmm. So the Dodd-Frank Act made it so that you could not start a short sale process if you were within 21 days of foreclosure, right? Because they wanted to make sure we weren't taking advantage of the homeowners that are going to foreclosure. So with Dodd-Frank, you can no longer start a short sale process 21 days prior to foreclosure. So what happened? All these people that could have saved their credit through a short sale now got foreclosed on. Explain to me how that helps them. So I think that's what's going to happen once we regulate. I think regulation's going to happen. I think we're fighting an uphill battle. I think it's an honorable, noble thing to do. It's not something I'm going to put energy behind. And I think that the homeowners will lose once that happens.
Do you think that it's going to be just like a wholesaler have to get licensed and that's going to be the game, or do you think it's actually going to be like you're just going to have to close? Like if you're to pick one of those two paths, what do you, or is it a combination?
I think they're going to try to license it. And I think once you try to license it, why would anyone do it? Because right now you got to get the government to sign off on it, right? Like you got to have this 3-day right of rescission like they have in Philadelphia, right? They pass it in Philadelphia. You got 72 hours to think about it, right? So like now we have to have another entity sign off on it and approve on it. Well, then it would just be easier to just close on it.
You know, this actually goes back to what we talked about earlier, and that's the amount of free content out there. The reality is, with wholesalers being potentially bad players, a lot of that is not them maliciously being bad players. It's just them not knowing any better, and an element of the free content out there in the world of free content, especially in a short form format. Like you can't learn how to effectively wholesale ethically from a 30-second video, right, on TikTok. Like this is just the real. So guys, anyone who's watching, like this is why you actually pay for mentorship and direct, you know, teaching from someone who's actually transacting, and don't learn it off of YouTube. YouTube's great. There's so many, like Steve, you put out so much amazing free content on YouTube, and it's actually really, really high quality. At the end of the day, it's still usually not going to be enough to carry you A to Z through an entire transaction in building a business and doing it. So this goes back to you mentioned this, there's pros and cons to, you know, the free side of things. This is one of those cons. And now, you know, everyone's kind of pushing wholesale. It's kind of the easy way to get into real estate because you don't need any money, you don't need experience, you don't need a license. The con of that is that now we've got a bunch of, you know, and this is like my generation kind of screwing things up a bit. You know, the young entrepreneurs or, you know, aspiring entrepreneurs, we get into this and maybe we don't have the right people guiding us. And we go out and I'm gonna, you know, be nice and give the benefit of the doubt and fail forward. But the reality is sometimes we can be reckless. And this is the other side of that. It's the unfortunate ramification of free content. This is really, I never thought about it that way. This is really interesting. So to anyone who's out there putting out content, you know, I would challenge you to, you know, be aware of what there is a consequence to what you put out, even if it's totally well-intentioned and good-hearted. Someone can take that, be reckless with it, and go hurt a homeowner. And, you know, in the sub-2 community, you know, being on the creative finance side of things as a creative finance specialist, we deal a lot of the times with a homeowner that just got burned by a reckless wholesaler.
Yep.
So, wow, this is crazy.
So, Steve, as we start to wrap up here, number one, just want to thank you so much for sharing your story and kind of walking us through, you know, the early days to kind of where you are now. What do you have going the rest of this year? Like, do you have events coming up? Do you have, are you speaking engagements? Like, where can people connect with you? Again, obviously outside of like being on social, like where can they connect with you more of an intimate setting in person, whether it be at your offices or speaking engagements?
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing is we have our day and a half sales training coming up literally next week. So there's a URL that you posted earlier.
Yep.
I'm partnering up with a good friend of mine. I haven't announced, this is the first time I've said this publicly. I'm partnering up with a good friend of mine. We're going to start doing sales manager training because right now I've been doing sales training for some time now, and it's been, you know, awesome. But as I've been doing it, I've now learned that there's more needs for sales management training, because we talk about salespeople, like managing salespeople is just a brutal business, right? So you got to find talented salespeople. You got to onboard them. You got to train them, which is what I do now. Then you got to manage them, right, to their KPIs and their metrics, and then you got to retain them, right? Because like one of the things that happens with salespeople is they compete against you. Like that's just the nature of the business, right? And so I'm partnering with a good friend of mine, and we're gonna be rolling something out sometime probably in the next 2 to 4 weeks. But we're gonna give you like a step-by-step to, you know, find talented salespeople, onboard them, train them, manage them, and retain them. And the person I'm partnering up with, I mean, he's helped someone build a 100+ transaction business in multiple markets, right? So like, we're not talking theory here. We're talking about like how to really build a scalable business around salespeople, which is the most difficult part of everything we do are the salespeople.
Okay, I'm so sorry to detract. I have to say this because this is the point where I'm at right now. It's in order to grow, I have to delegate, and one of the things that's really hard to delegate is the sales management, the training of the onboarding of people to become closers, to train them how to close. The reality is, you said it perfectly. After about 6 months to a year, once because they're smart, because closers are really smart. Once they've reverse engineered the entire model, they're going to go and do it on their own. And one of the biggest, the biggest bottlenecks that I've run into is how do I replace myself as a sales manager? And that is, so I can't wait for that. And you have the training next week. I think it's on the 15th to the 18th of those dates.
I think it's 18th and 19th, Thursday, Friday.
18th and 19th. Okay. And that's going to be in Phoenix.
In my office, you get to check out our whole operation. Logan was here a month and a half ago when Pace was out here. But yeah, I mean, you get to check our whole office. You get to talk to all our people, right? You can talk to our TC, our lead manager, our acquisition guys, our dispo, our entire media team, my administrative staff, our education guys, right? Like, I mean, our whole company. I mean, we have 6,000 square feet here, and you can see our whole studio and operation and everything.
Yeah. It's amazing, and everyone I met on your team was super friendly, super nice. I ended up having like a little powwow session with like Ryan and Josh, and a couple other people that were just in there. We're just chatting about real estate, and everyone is about the game. I think that's really cool too, is that everyone is about they're about the game, right? They all understand what's going on. Everyone is passionate, and obviously it starts from the top, right? It starts with their leader, and so definitely, if you guys have the opportunity to do that, like, again, click on the link. It's in the chat as well. And Steve, again, just want to say thank you so much for giving us your time, sharing the wisdom with us, and sharing your story with us. One of the most powerful things me and Sam we're very passionate about hearing people's stories, because people resonate with it. They hear your story, and we don't know what part they resonate with or who's going to resonate with it, but somebody will, and that person will change the world. So just thank you so much for your time. Really do appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. And yeah, I love what you guys are doing. You know, it sounds a lot like what I was doing when I first started. So I think it's fantastic. And I think that if we can touch just one or two people to help them, you know, like maybe remove a mental hurdle, an obstacle, or just kind of enlighten them, kind of show them like the way it's going to be. Like maybe this is where they are today. And now we've let them know a little bit of a roadmap. Like here are some things that are going to suck in the near future. If we can help just a few people, then I'm happy I got to be here.
Okay. As we wrap up, two things. Number one, we talk about people resonating. We've had a lot of guests on who've had amazing stories. And I've had countless people reach out. We've had, phenomenal human beings like Eric Klein, who was on Real Estate Disruptors not too long ago. And people resonate with his story. I want you to know that I don't think I've actually personally resonated with the story so much before until today. Everything that you said today was just taking me back to different parts of my life, different seasons. I didn't even know that there was a term for having achievement addiction. And now I know, like, oh, great. Now I know what's wrong with me. So Steve, truly, brother, thank you so much for being here. And sharing it. My mind's running a million miles a minute, but I do want to end with this. Pace, unfortunately, couldn't be here with us today because he's in North Carolina walking, I think, like a 408 unit multifamily crazy deal that he's doing.
Pace doing Pace things.
Sounds like Pace. Yeah, just doing Pace things, right? Got up at 4 a.m., bought a $100 million property. That's Pace. Yeah. But he actually wanted me to share a message with you today, and I think it'd be fitting to end it. Pace wanted you to know, and this is, he said, Sam, make sure you tell Steve Trang this. He said that he owes it all to you.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate him saying that. I want to receive all of it. That's probably the right thing to do, but Pace was going to be successful no matter what. I just kind of gave him a little bit of guidance.
Yeah. This has been amazing.
Every puzzle piece is so important. It's so important. Yeah. Right. And honestly, like, I wouldn't know who you were if it wasn't for Pace, though, as well. Right. I met you at that mastermind, and I didn't know who you were before then. I was like, wow. And I started obviously diving in and realized who you are. I was like, wow, that was really cool. I had no idea. So again, just super appreciate you. Sam, seriously, thank you for doing this with us. Steve, thank you for giving us the time and honestly being the leader and like inspiring us to want to do this podcast. That was one of the reasons at that mastermind. I was like, I want to do a podcast, and I didn't know exactly why or when or who, but like that was one of the inspirations. But was your podcast. So thank you so much.
Great job taking action. Yeah, thank you guys for having me. It's been absolutely my pleasure. I enjoy giving back wherever I can, so I appreciate you having me on.
It's awesome. All right, guys. Thanks so much. Origin Story Podcast, Steve Trang. Go like Steve on YouTube. Go get on his Instagrams. Go to his YouTube. Go sign up for his sales trainings. Like, go love on him for sure. That's how you can pay back to us. And then go subscribe to Sam and I's YouTubes. Let's go, guys. Origin Story Podcast. We're out. Bye.